You don't belong in the first-class cabin, the man sneered, loud enough for the entire gate to hear. This isn't a charity bus. This is a commercial airline for people who can afford dignity, not whatever you are. The words landed like spit. He leaned closer, voice dripping with sarcasm and contempt. Look at you, hoodie, cheap shoes, wrong gate, wrong class, wrong skin. You people always try this. Flash confidence like it's a boarding pass. Newsflash, airline policy isn't some street rule you can bend. A hush spread across gate C-17. Passengers froze mid-step. Phones hovered, already recording. A child stared. Someone coughed. No one intervened. The man delivering the abuse was Graham Whitlock, 52 years old, white regional airline executive, immaculately pressed navy suit, platinum frequent flyer pin gleaming on his lapel. His jaw was tight with the easy cruelty of someone who had never been questioned. Whitlock had spent 2 decades mastering the art of humiliating people with a smile, weaponizing procedure, hiding prejudice behind policy. He jabbed a finger at the boarding scanner. You think because you memorize the word rights you get to sit up front? Passenger rights don't mean you get to cosplay success. This cabin is for contributors, investors, real people. The man he was attacking did not raise his voice. He stood calmly, boarding pass still in hand. Elias Monroe, 49 years old, black, deep brown skin, dressed in a plain charcoal hoodie and dark jeans, looked like any other late-night traveler, except for the stillness in his posture. No fidgeting, no anger flaring, just a controlled breath, measured and quiet, as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. I'm on this flight, Elias said evenly. Seat 1A. Whitlock laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Seat 1A? He scoffed. Buddy, the only A you've earned is audacity. You expect us to believe someone like you just wandered into first class? He turned to the gate agent with exaggerated patience. Scan it again. These people love printing fake passes. Must be something in the culture. Shortcuts, entitlement, always reaching for what isn't theirs. The gate agent hesitated, eyes flicking between them. She scanned the pass again. The screen blinked. Yellow, then red. Whitlock's smile widened. There it is, he said triumphantly. Flagged. Behavioral risk. System doesn't lie. Elias glanced at the screen, then at Whitlock. What exactly is the risk? Whitlock leaned in, lowering his voice just enough to sound dangerous. Unpredictable behavior, non-compliance, and frankly, he smirked. Optics. You make people nervous. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. Elias remained still. Behind him, a woman whispered, That's messed up. Someone else muttered, Here we go again. Whitlock straightened, performing authority like theater. This airline has standards. We don't let anyone disrupt the experience of our premium customers, especially not someone who looks like they learned manners from a protest chant. Elias finally spoke again, calm but clear. Are you denying me boarding? Whitlock didn't hesitate. I'm protecting the airline. Airline policy gives me discretion, and discretion says you don't fly. Security shifted closer. Elias nodded once, as if acknowledging a fact, not an insult. Then I'd like a record of that decision. Whitlock laughed again, louder. Oh, you want paperwork now? Listen, this isn't court. This is real life. You should be grateful we're not escorting you out in cuffs. The gate clock ticked. Boarding stalled. No one noticed the subtle change on the system monitor behind the desk. A quiet background process had begun running, triggered not by Elias's voice, but by Whitlock's manual override. Elias looked at the timestamp on the screen. Memorized it. He stepped back without resistance. Sir, a security officer said, uncertain. We'll need you to wait to the side. Elias complied. Whitlock exhaled, satisfied. He adjusted his cufflinks and addressed the crowd. Apologies for the delay, folks. We just had to handle a situation. The word situation hung in the air, ugly and heavy. As Elias stood aside, humiliation pressing in from every angle. His phone vibrated once in his pocket. He did not check it. Instead, he closed his eyes briefly, just long enough to steady himself. A verse his mother used to whisper came back to him, uninvited but steady. "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." Exodus 14:14. Elias opened his eyes. Stillness was not weakness. It was timing. Whitlock waved for boarding to resume, unaware that with his contemptuous little gesture, he had crossed a line written not in policy manuals, but in code, contracts, and federal oversight. The plane. Door remained open. The runway waited. If you have ever been judged before you spoke, dismissed before you were heard, or humiliated because someone thought power belonged to them, then what happens next with Elias Monroe will make you hold your breath. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to witness what quiet power does when the system itself starts watching. What no one at Gate C-17 realizes yet is that this single denied boarding just activated a countdown the airline can't stop. The boarding line lurched forward again as if nothing had happened. A mechanical voice chimed. A stroller squeaked. A couple laughed too loudly, relieved the situation was over. The door to the jet bridge yawned open, swallowing passengers who avoided looking back. Elias stood where security had positioned him, off to the side, beneath a blinking departures screen. The yellow light washed his hoodie in a sickly glow. He watched the procession with a steady gaze, not bitter, not pleading, waiting. Whitlock basked in the small victory. He loved this moment, the aftertaste of authority. He leaned toward the gate agent, lowering his voice but not his volume. "See," he said, "cleaned up. Policy works when you don't let feelings get in the way." The agent nodded, uneasy. "Yes, sir." Whitlock straightened, scanning the line like a general inspecting troops. He spotted Elias still standing there and frowned, irritated by the unfinished feeling. "You!" Whitlock snapped, pointing. "Why are you still here?" Elias answered evenly. "You asked me to wait." Whitlock smirked. "Don't get clever. This isn't a negotiation. You missed your chance." "I didn't miss anything," Elias replied. "I was denied boarding." A few nearby passengers slowed, pretending to check their phones. Whitlock rolled his eyes. "Semantics. Look," he gestured broadly. "The plane's almost full. You want to stand here arguing while people who actually belong get delayed?" He leaned closer, voice dropping into a poisonous whisper. "This is why people like you never get ahead, always talking about rights instead of knowing your place." Elias felt the words, but he did not absorb them. He kept his eyes on Whitlock's badge, the small embossed letters beneath the name, memorizing. "Sir," a security officer interjected, trying to sound neutral. "If you don't have a seat assignment—" "I do," Elias said calmly. "Seat 1A. Whitlock barked a laugh. "Still on that fairy tale?" He turned to the officer. "You see what I'm dealing with? Delusional confidence. Textbook." The officer hesitated. He glanced at the gate agent's screen again. The red flag still pulsed. Whitlock noticed and pounced. "There it is. System flagged him. We don't debate the system." Elias finally shifted his weight, a small movement that caught Whitlock's attention. "Which system?" Elias asked. Whitlock frowned. "What?" "Which system flagged me?" Elias repeated. "The passenger risk model, the compliance engine, or the behavioral overlay?" A beat. The gate agent blinked. Whitlock's eyes narrowed. "You don't need to explain our infrastructure to him." Elias's voice stayed level. "I'm not asking for an explanation. I'm asking for accuracy." Whitlock scoffed. "Accuracy?" He shook his head, amused. "Buddy, you think dropping technical words makes you sound important?" Elias looked past him at the monitor. "The timestamp," he said. "It changed." The agent glanced down again, then froze. Whitlock snapped. "Don't—" Too late. The agent swallowed. It did." A ripple of unease passed through Whitlock's expression. Just a hairline crack. "So what?" "So," Elias said quietly, That flag wasn't generated by the system. It was manually overridden. Whitlock's smile returned brittle. And manual overrides require justification codes. Whitlock leaned back, folding his arms. I am the justification. A few passengers had stopped outright now. Elias met his eyes for the first time. Not under federal aviation compliance. Whitlock's laugh rang out, sharp and mocking. Oh, here we go. You people love throwing around federal like it's a magic word. You used your discretion, Elias continued, unruffled. Discretion leaves a trail. Whitlock stepped closer, invading his space. Listen to me. I don't care if you read a blog or watched a documentary. This airline runs on experience, not theories. And experience says when someone looks like trouble... Graham, the gate agent said softly, almost pleading. He ignored her. You stop it before it spreads. Elias nodded once. Then you'll have no problem documenting it. Whitlock's jaw tightened. I don't answer to... You. No, Elias agreed. You answer to the system you just touched. For the first time, Whitlock hesitated. Behind the desk, the monitor refreshed again. A small icon appeared, unnoticed by most, but not by Elias. A background process had moved from idle to active. Whitlock saw the agent's face pale. What now? The agent swallowed. Sir, the compliance audit just initiated. Whitlock scoffed. Audits initiate all the time. Yes, but... She lowered her voice. This one's federal linked. Whitlock's confidence flickered, then hardened. He straightened, loud again, performative. Enough, he said. We're done here. Escort him out of the boarding area. The security officer shifted uncomfortably. Sir, protocol says... I know protocol, Whitlock snapped, and I'm invoking it. Elias did not resist as the officer guided him a few steps farther from the gate. Cameras followed. Whispers grew. Did you hear what he said? That's messed up. Why is he so calm? Elias stopped just short of the terminal windows. Beyond the glass, the aircraft sat waiting, lights on, engines quiet. His phone vibrated again. This time he glanced down. A single line appeared on the screen. Audit level elevated. Federal observer engaged. Elias slid the phone back into his pocket. Whitlock watched him, suspicious. What's that? Someone texting you instructions? Elias met his gaze. No. Whitlock smirked. Good. Because no one's coming to save you. Elias looked past him, toward the gate, toward the plane, toward the invisible machinery beginning to turn. I'm not the one who needs saving, he said softly. Whitlock snorted. Right. You're the hero in your own movie. Elias didn't respond. The boarding door remained open. The clock kept ticking. And somewhere far beyond Gate C-17, a silent system had begun asking questions no one here could stop. If you've ever watched power twist the rules and wondered who's really protected when policy becomes a weapon, then what unfolds next will leave you stunned. Stay with Dignity voices, like subscribe and keep watching, because silence just triggered something far bigger than a denied seat. As the plane prepares to push back, a federal observer steps closer, and the humiliation that was meant to end this story is about to go very, very public. The jet bridge door stayed open longer than it should have. That delay, small, almost unnoticeable, became the stage. Passengers were already seated now, belts clicking, overhead bins slamming shut. The first-class cabin glowed warm and insulated, a world apart from the gate where Elias stood under fluorescent lights. The contrast felt intentional, like a lesson someone wanted taught. Graham Whitlock made sure of it. He returned to the podium with a swagger sharpened by attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced loudly, thank you for your patience. We had to address a security irregularity. His eyes flicked to Elias. An individual attempted to access a restricted cabin without authorization. A murmur rippled through the seated passengers who could still see the gate through the glass. Heads turned, phones lifted. A steward paused mid-step. Elias felt the heat of it, the public framing, the slow smear. This was Whitlock's specialty, not just denial, but narrative. A woman near the front whispered, "That's him." Whitlock continued, voice polished and cruel. "We take passenger rights seriously, but rights don't override safety, especially when patterns suggest volatility." He let the word hang. Elias took one step forward, not aggressive. Present. "Say what you mean," Elias said. Whitlock smiled thinly. "I just did." Security shifted, uncertain. The gate agent looked like she wanted to disappear. Whitlock leaned into the microphone again. "This airline has zero tolerance for disruptions. We are a commercial airline, not a social experiment." A few gasps, a few nods. The crowd split in half without realizing it. Elias said nothing. That silence, the refusal to defend himself on Whitlock's terms, gnawed at Whitlock more than any argument could have. He stepped closer, dropping the microphone, lowering his voice just enough to sound like a secret. "You think standing there all calm makes you noble?" Whitlock whispered. "It makes you suspicious. You people always think silence is power. It's not. It's guilt dressed up as dignity." Elias met his eyes. "You're recording this as a security incident." Whitlock scoffed. "Of course. Everything's documented." "Good," Elias said. "Then document this too." Whitlock's jaw clenched. "Document what?" "That you denied boarding based on a manual override without probable cause." Whitlock laughed, sharp and loud. "Probable cause? This isn't a courtroom." "Not yet," Elias replied. Behind the podium, the compliance monitor refreshed again. A small banner appeared at the top of the screen, unreadable from a distance. The gate agent saw it and went pale. Whitlock followed her gaze. "What is it now?" She swallowed. "Sir, the audit escalated." Whitlock waved it off. "Audits escalate. That's what they do." "Yes, but this one flagged corporate negligence." The word landed wrong. Too heavy, too formal. A nearby passenger caught it. "Did she say negligence?" Whitlock snapped. "Lower your voice." Elias turned slightly, angling himself so the camera lenses caught his face, calm, unbroken. "Negligence isn't loud," he said. "It's repetitive." Whitlock bristled. "You don't get to lecture us about our operations." "I'm not," Elias said. "I'm reminding you how patterns are proven." Whitlock's patience cracked. He turned to security. "Escort him out of the secured area. Now." The officer hesitated. "Sir, protocol requires—" "I know protocol better than you," Whitlock barked. "Move." The officer placed a gentle hand near Elias's elbow. "Sir," Elias nodded. "It's fine." As he was guided away, Whitlock raised his voice again, ensuring the humiliation traveled. "This is what happens," he announced, "when people mistake confidence for entitlement. Rules exist for a reason." Elias stopped at the edge of the terminal windows. Beyond them, the aircraft's engines began to hum, a low, patient sound. He turned back. "You're right," he said. "Rules do exist." Whitlock smirked. "Glad we agree." "And they exist," Elias continued, "to protect people from exactly this." Whitlock laughed. "From what? Being told no?" "From selective enforcement," Elias said. "From abuse of discretion, from systems that confuse prejudice with policy." A few passengers clapped, quietly, unsure. Others shushed them. Whitlock leaned in one last time, venomous. "You're not a victim. You're a nobody who got caught trying to be something else." Elias didn't flinch. "If that were true," he said, "none of this would matter." Whitlock opened his mouth to respond. And a new voice cut in. "Mr. Whitlock." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. A woman stepped forward from the periphery, badge clipped neatly to her jacket. Neutral colors. Federal calm. She had been there the entire time, unnoticed, unimportant by design. Whitlock turned, irritation flashing. "And you are?" She held up her badge just long enough. Federal Compliance Liaison. The terminal went still. Whitlock scoffed, recovering quickly. This is an internal matter. Not anymore, she said. Your manual override triggered a legal accountability review. Whitlock's smile tightened. On what grounds? Discriminatory. Enforcement, she replied evenly, and obstruction of passenger access. Whitlock laughed too loudly. This is absurd, she glanced at the screen. Your own system disagrees. The gate agent stared at the monitor, eyes wide. Sir, it's requesting justification codes. Whitlock snapped. I already gave, and the system rejected them, the liaison finished. Twice. Elias stood quietly, hands relaxed at his sides. Whitlock's voice dropped. This man provoked the situation. The liaison looked at Elias. Did you? Elias shook his head once. I asked for accuracy. She nodded. That's on record. Whitlock felt the crowd shift, not against him yet, but away from him. The certainty he'd relied on began to thin. The liaison turned to the gate agent. Pause boarding. But the plane? Pause it. The engines outside idled down. Whitlock snapped. You can't just... I can, she said. And I am. Elias felt the weight of the moment, the humiliation still fresh, the camera still rolling, but something else now layered over it. Inevitability. A verse surfaced in his mind, steady and grounding. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. Psalm 84:10. Justice, he knew, was not loud. It was deliberate. Whitlock looked at Elias, fury and fear tangling. You planned this. Elias met his gaze. No? Then why is this happening? Because patterns eventually speak, Elias said, even when people don't. The liaison gestured to security. Sir, I need you to step aside. Whitlock hesitated, then complied, stiff with disbelief. As he moved, Elias remained where he was, centered in the frame, the quiet eye of a gathering storm. The humiliation Whitlock had engineered was no longer his to control. If you've ever watched someone weaponize rules to break another person in public, stay with us. What just unfolded wasn't revenge. It was the beginning of accountability, like subscribe and remain with dignity voices, because when systems start telling the truth, everything changes. As boarding freezes and federal oversight tightens, the question shifts from who is this man to what have they done, and the silence Elias keeps is about to become unbearable for everyone else. The terminal felt different once the engines powered down, not louder, quieter, as if the airport itself had leaned in. Boarding screens froze. The scrolling departure updates halted mid-sentence. A soft chime echoed, then stopped. Somewhere above gate C-17, an air vent rattled and fell still. Silence spread the way truth does, slow, undeniable. Elias stood exactly where he had been left, near the glass, hands relaxed at his sides. He did not move to reclaim space. He did not step forward to explain himself. He simply remained. That was the look. Not defiance, not fear. A stillness that unsettled everyone watching. Graham Whitlock, now standing several feet away under the gaze of the federal liaison, tried to fill the vacuum with noise. This is excessive, he snapped. You're grounding a flight over a misunderstanding. The liaison didn't raise her voice. I paused boarding. You're humiliating the airline. No, she replied. Your decisions did that. Whitlock scoffed, turning briefly to the onlookers as if appealing to a jury. This man manipulated the situation. He knew exactly what he was doing. Elias lifted his eyes. Not sharply, not angrily, just enough. Whitlock faltered mid-sentence. There was something in that gaze, measured, almost compassionate, that made Whitlock suddenly aware of how much he had said, how many cameras were still pointed, how quiet the room had become. The federal liaison noticed the shift. She didn't look at Elias. She watched Whitlock. Mr. Whitlock, she said, I need you to answer one question. He folded his arms. Fine. When you initiated the manual override, she continued, What specific behavior justified the risk flag? Whitlock hesitated for half a beat too long. He was disruptive. The liaison nodded. Define disruptive. He questioned authority. The liaison tilted her head slightly. Questioning authority is not a behavioral risk. Whitlock's jaw tightened. He made other passengers uncomfortable. Which passengers? She asked. Whitlock gestured vaguely. Look around. She followed his gesture. People avoided his eyes. I'm asking for documented complaints, she said calmly. Whitlock snapped, This is ridiculous. Then documentation should be easy, she replied. Behind the podium, the gate agent's fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling. The liaison turned to her. Please display the incident log. The monitor shifted. Lines of text scrolled down. Timestamps, actions, overrides. Elias watched quietly, noting what Whitlock did not. The override code, the absence of corroboration, the pattern. Whitlock leaned closer to the screen, squinting. Why is it showing prior incidents? The gate agent swallowed. Sir, it's pulling historical data. Whitlock stiffened. That's not relevant. The liaison's voice remained even. It is now. The crowd leaned forward, almost imperceptibly. One passenger whispered, Oh my God. Another murmured, This isn't the first time. Elias remained silent. That silence, unchanging, unreactive, became a mirror. Whitlock saw himself reflected in it. The jokes he'd made, the shortcuts he'd taken, the confidence that had grown unchecked. You're twisting this, Whitlock said, but the edge was gone. No, the liaison replied. The system is contextualizing it. She turned slightly, addressing no one and everyone. Manual overrides aren't isolated events. They're data. Points. Whitlock snapped. You're acting like he's some kind of... He stopped, because for the first time he looked at Elias not as a problem, but as an unknown. Elias met his eyes again. Calm. Still. Whitlock's voice dropped. Who are you? Elias didn't answer. The liaison noticed. He doesn't need to answer that. Whitlock scoffed weakly. Everyone needs to answer something. Not always, she said. Sometimes the system does. The screen refreshed again. A new label appeared at the top. Pattern analysis active. The gate agent inhaled sharply. Sir, it's flagging repeated discretionary bias. Whitlock's face drained of color. That's impossible. It's statistical, the liaison replied. Patterns don't accuse, they reveal. Whitlock turned to Elias, voice low, urgent. You set me up. Elias spoke for the first time in several minutes. His tone was gentle. No, he said. You did what you always do. Whitlock opened his mouth, then closed it. Because there was no argument, that didn't make it worse. The liaison checked her tablet. At this point, federal oversight protocol requires temporary authority suspension. Whitlock laughed hollowly. You can't just take my authority. She met his eyes. I already have. Security shifted closer, not to Elias this time, but to Whitlock. The crowd noticed. Phones rose higher. Whitlock looked around, suddenly aware of how exposed he was. This is a witch hunt. No, the liaison said. It's a review. She gestured toward Elias, not accusing, not elevating, simply acknowledging presence. This man exercised restraint, she said. You exercise discretion without restraint. The difference matters. Whitlock's voice cracked. He humiliated me. The liaison shook her head. You humiliated yourself. The system just caught up. Elias felt something loosen in his chest. Not triumph, not relief. Recognition. This moment was not about him reclaiming dignity. It was about dignity revealing itself. A verse surfaced in his mind, steady as breath. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Philippians 4:5. Whitlock stared at him, searching for rage, for satisfaction, for anything he could fight. He found none. Only that look, quiet, unmoved, unassailable. The liaison turned to the gate agent. Initiate protocol review. Lock discretionary access. Yes, ma'am. Whitlock took a step back, then another, as if space itself were retreating from him. The plane remained still. The gate remained closed. But something fundamental had shifted. Elias had not raised his voice, had not announced his importance, had not demanded respect. He had simply refused to surrender himself to someone else's narrative. And now the silence he carried had become unbearable. Not for him, but for the man who mistook noise for power. The room did not erupt when the truth arrived. It stilled. That was the first sign it was real. The federal liaison stood a half-step back from the podium, tablet angled low, eyes scanning lines of confirmation that had stopped changing. The compliance banner at the top of the monitor no longer blinked. It held steady, locked in. Graham Whitlock felt it before anyone said anything. That sickening sense that the ground beneath you had decided not to hold. "This has gone far enough," he said, voice hoarse. "You're freezing operations over a misunderstanding." The liaison didn't look at him. "Operations aren't frozen." Whitlock blinked. "What?" She raised her eyes, calm as glass. "Authority is." A murmur rippled through the crowd, quiet, uncertain, hungry. Whitlock turned to the gate agent. "Tell her she's wrong." The agent swallowed. "Sir, discretionary access has been revoked." Whitlock laughed once, brittle. "By who?" The liaison finally turned, not toward Whitlock, but toward Elias. Every head followed. Elias did not step forward. He did not straighten his shoulders. He did not perform relief or vindication. He simply lifted his gaze to meet hers. She nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Monroe," she said, clearly. The name cut through the terminal like a dropped glass. Whitlock frowned. "You know him?" "Yes," she replied. "From the filings." Whitlock scoffed, trying to recover. "Filings? You make it sound like he's—" She turned her tablet so the gate agent could see. Then the security officer. Then Whitlock. Lines of text, signatures, dates. Whitlock leaned closer, squinting. "What is this?" "Governance architecture," the liaison said. "Integrity clauses. Automated compliance triggers." Whitlock shook his head. "That doesn't mean anything." "It means," she continued evenly, "that the discretionary override you used just activated a system you don't control." The crowd leaned in. Elias remained silent. Whitlock's voice rose. "Who does control it?" The liaison finally answered the question he hadn't meant to ask. "He does." Silence crashed down, not the awkward kind, the final kind. Whitlock laughed, loud, disbelieving. "That's ridiculous. He's a passenger." Elias spoke, not loudly, not proudly, just clearly. "I was." Whitlock stared at him. "You expect us to believe you're—" "What? Some secret executive?" Elias shook his head. "I don't expect anything." The liaison stepped forward now, addressing the room. "For clarity," she said, "Mr. Elias Monroe is the principal architect of the airline's integrity framework and the majority silent stakeholder assigned to oversee compliance independence." A collective inhale. Whitlock staggered back half a step. No, that's not possible." Elias looked at him, not with satisfaction, but with something like sorrow. "I didn't come here to reveal myself," Elias said quietly. "I came because if this flight didn't leave safely tonight, thousands wouldn't leave tomorrow." Whitlock's mouth opened, closed. "You built this airline?" someone whispered. Elias corrected gently. "I protected it." The liaison nodded. "Which is why the system responded the way it did. The clauses are time-locked. Once triggered, they don't ask permission." Whitlock's voice trembled. "You set a trap." "No," Elias said. "I built guardrails." Whitlock's eyes darted around, at the cameras, the passengers, the staff who had watched him humiliate a man they thought was powerless. "You could have stopped this," he hissed. "You could have told me." Elias met his gaze. "And you would have listened?" Whitlock had no answer. The liaison tapped her tablet. Effective immediately, a federal oversight team assumes interim operational authority. "Pending full review," Whitlock snapped. "You can't do this publicly." She didn't blink. "You did." The irony landed hard. Security stepped closer to Whitlock now, not aggressive, just present. The gate agent's voice shook. "Sir, HR and legal are on the line." Whitlock slumped into a chair he hadn't noticed behind him. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, not in triumph, but in release. A verse rose in him, steady and anchoring. "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." Proverbs 11:2. He opened his eyes. The liaison addressed him again. "Mr. Monroe, the board will convene within the hour. They'll need your direction." Elias shook his head slightly. "They'll need the policy." She understood. "As written?" "As written," he confirmed. Whitlock looked up sharply. "You're not even going to—" "What?" Elias asked gently. "Gloat?" Whitlock swallowed. "I don't need to," Elias said. "The system already spoke." The liaison gestured toward the aircraft outside. "Your seat is still open." Elias glanced through the glass at the plane. Engines quiet, lights patient. "For now," he said. Whitlock's voice cracked. "You ruined me." Elias looked at him. Finally. Really looked. "No," he said. "You revealed yourself." The liaison placed a hand on Whitlock's shoulder. "Sir, we need you to come with us." As he was escorted away, the crowd parted. Not dramatically, but decisively. Elias stayed where he was. A passenger approached hesitantly. "Sir, I'm sorry. We didn't know." Elias nodded. Most people don't. The gate agent wiped her eyes. "I should have—" "You followed the screen," Elias said kindly. "That's how systems train us." The aircraft door remained open. But the story had already changed. Justice hadn't shouted. It had remembered. If you've ever watched quiet dignity outlast loud arrogance, this is why these stories matter. Like, subscribe and stay with Dignity Voices, because what happens next isn't revenge. It's reckoning done right. With authority shifting and the board waking up, the question becomes, what does justice look like when the man who wrote the rules refuses to bend them? The airport did not explode into chaos. That was the first thing Graham Whitlock noticed, and the thing that unsettled him most. There were no raised voices, no frantic scrambling, no confused shouting to blur responsibility. The terminal moved with unsettling calm, as if it had decided on its own that something old had ended and something truer had begun. Departure screens refreshed quietly. Boarding queues paused, then realigned. The aircraft outside the glass remained perfectly still, navigation lights blinking with disciplined patience, engines humming at idle like they were waiting for permission rather than demanding it. Elias stood near the window, exactly where he had been left. He had not stepped forward when authority shifted. He had not stepped back when eyes turned toward him. His posture remained unchanged, hands relaxed, shoulders loose, face composed. The system did not need him to perform. The federal liaison lowered her phone after a final secure call. Her voice was level, procedural. Operational authority transfer confirmed. Federal oversight protocol is now active. Whitlock let out a brittle laugh. "You keep saying that like it means something." She met his gaze. "It does. Just not to you anymore." Behind the gate podium, the agent stared at her monitor in disbelief. Windows collapsed one by one. Access tabs dimmed. Permissions vanished as if they had never existed. Tools she had been trained to defer to were locking themselves without asking her opinion. Her voice trembled. "Sir, discretionary access is gone." Elias nodded once. "Then the protocol is holding." Whitlock pushed himself up from the chair, anger flashing through the disbelief. "You froze a flight over interpretation." "No," Elias replied calmly. I interrupted a pattern. Whitlock sneered. You think this makes you noble? Elias met his eyes, steady and unprovoked. I think systems should outlive personalities. The liaison stepped closer, tablet in hand. Mr. Whitlock, your executive credentials are suspended pending federal review. Whitlock laughed too loudly, trying to fill the air. By whose authority? By the governance framework you violated, she replied, and by the oversight channel your actions activated. Whitlock turned toward Elias, the color draining from his face. You designed this to destroy people. Elias shook his head. I designed it to prevent damage. Across the terminal, operations managers received synchronized alerts. Maintenance logs recalibrated, staffing permissions rebalanced. What had once been an invisible architecture rose without spectacle, asserting itself through quiet certainty. Whitlock noticed junior supervisors issuing instructions without looking at him. That was when panic replaced arrogance. You're dismantling the airline, he said. Elias answered softly. I'm correcting it. The liaison scrolled. Compliance lock initiated across regional operations. HR discretion audit active. Independent oversight committee engaged. Whitlock clenched his fists. You're killing profit. Negligence kills profit, Elias replied. Safety sustains it. Whitlock took a step toward him, voice breaking. You could have warned me. I did, Elias said gently. Every time you mistook power for permission. The liaison gestured to security. Mr. Whitlock, please step aside. This is my airline, Whitlock snapped. Not today, she answered. Security escorted him away. Not roughly, not theatrically, but with unmistakable finality. Cameras followed him down the corridor as his authority left his posture before the frame did. The terminal exhaled. Passengers whispered. Not gossip, realization. A man lowered his phone. A woman pressed her palms together. Someone murmured, I didn't think systems actually worked. Elias remained silent. The gate agent approached him, steadier now. Sir, everything changed. Elias offered a small, almost apologetic smile. No, it surfaced. The liaison turned to him. The board wants you present. Emergency session. They want direction. Elias considered it, then shook his head. They have the framework. Let it speak. You won't attend? No. She studied him. Why? Because justice that requires supervision isn't justice, Elias said. It's performance. A verse surfaced in him, quiet and grounding. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crooked are destroyed by their duplicity. Proverbs 11.3. The liaison nodded slowly. You built something rare. Elias looked around, the systems recalibrating, the airline relearning discipline. I built something that doesn't bend for applause. An internal announcement chimed softly. Operational control transfer complete. Not dramatic, definitive. The weight lifted from Elias's chest, not triumph, but release. The gate agent hesitated. Sir, your seat is still available. Elias looked through the glass at the aircraft. Door open. Lights steady. I won't be boarding, he said. The agent blinked. But it's yours. I know, Elias replied. Others need it more tonight. The liaison raised an eyebrow. You're certain? Yes. Why? Because justice isn't about arrival, Elias said. It's about direction. She smiled faintly. You don't need the room. No, Elias said. That's how you know it's working. Boarding resumed. Calm. Ordinary. Restored. As passengers moved forward, Elias stepped back, becoming once again just a man in a terminal. No announcement followed him. No escort accompanied him. The aircraft pushed back. Elias watched it taxi toward the runway, engines humming, systems aligned. Justice had not shouted. It had executed. And once the system finished turning its key, it no longer needed the man who built the lock. The collapse did not arrive with shouting or alarms. It arrived with systems waking up and doing exactly what they were built to do. At 6:02 a.m., internal servers synchronized across the airline's network, pushing out notices that carried no emotion, no argument, and no escape. They were precise, timed, and final. Temporary executive suspension. Independent compliance authority installed. Discretionary override functions disabled. The words were clinical on purpose. Language stripped of drama left no room for negotiation. In offices, lounges, and maintenance hubs, employees froze mid-motion as screens refreshed. Some read the messages twice, waiting for them to disappear. Others felt a slow breath leave their lungs, realizing they had been holding it for years. Elias sat alone at a cafe table near the far windows of the terminal, a paper cup of coffee cooling untouched between his hands. Outside, the runway glowed pale under early sunlight. Aircraft moved again, carefully, deliberately, guided by procedures that no longer bent for personality. The airport sounded normal, and that normality felt newly earned. Inside the organization, the hierarchy unraveled thread by thread. Graham Whitlock's name vanished first, not announced, not condemned, simply absent. Email permissions dissolved, approval chains rerouted, meeting invitations auto-canceled. His name, once a bottleneck through which decisions passed, now produced only error messages. The airline did not pause to grieve his absence. It adapted, the way systems do when distortion is removed. A mid-level operations manager who had been overridden countless times stood straighter as her authority was validated by policy alone. Maintenance supervisors received unquestionable grounding rights. Human resources reopened files long marked resolved, discovering patterns that no longer looked coincidental when aligned side by side. The system was not tearing itself apart. It was correcting itself. Television screens above the concourse flickered to life. Anchors spoke carefully, testing each word before releasing it. Federal compliance officials have confirmed an intervention following evidence of discriminatory enforcement, procedural misconduct, and executive overreach within the airline's regional leadership. Passengers slowed, some stopped. A few recognized the gate, the footage, the still man at the center of it. Elias did not look up. He watched people instead. The gate agent from the night before approached him, posture steadier, voice controlled. She no longer sounded afraid. "They've asked us to submit sworn statements," she said. "Every override, every denial." Elias nodded once. "Tell the truth." Her eyes shimmered. "We are. All of us." Nearby, a first-class passenger lingered, hands clasped awkwardly. "I uploaded the video," he said. "No captions, no commentary. Just what happened." "That's enough," Elias replied. The footage spread without narrative. Viewers saw the pause before the override, heard the language chosen casually, noticed how normal humiliation sounded when authority believed itself justified. The response was not immediate fury, but recognition. This wasn't new. This wasn't accidental. This was familiar. Inside the boardroom, executives gathered with restrained urgency. Lawyers spoke little. Data filled the room. Pattern analyses glowed across the screens, mapping discretionary overrides against race, class, and appearance. Complaints once dismissed as isolated now formed a clear arc. One director finally asked the question no one wanted to frame. "How long has this been happening?" Silence answered. The evidence did not need help. A federal memorandum arrived moments later, devastating in its calm. It cited corporate negligence, systemic exposure, and failure of internal safeguards. It outlined mandatory reform, independent oversight, and public accountability. Not punishment, correction. Elsewhere, Whitlock's world collapsed inward. His phone lay silent on a borrowed desk. Messages he sent went unanswered. Authority he had mistaken for identity evaporated, leaving only the discomfort of being seen clearly. "I followed policy," he muttered to himself. The system, indifferent to justification, had already recorded the difference between discretion and abuse. Back in the terminal, Elias closed his eyes briefly as a verse surfaced, steady and instructive. For nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, nor anything concealed that will not be brought into the open. The words settled, not as judgment but as fact. A young flight attendant approached hesitantly. "Sir, thank you." "For what?" Elias asked. "For making it safer," she said. "For everyone who comes after." Elias shook his head gently. "For letting it be counted." Before noon, the airline issued its first statement. It avoided names and avoided excuses. It acknowledged harm, announced reforms, and committed to independent monitoring. Lawyers shaped the language carefully, but even shaped, it carried weight. Markets reacted cautiously, then favorably. Stability mattered more than bravado. Safety restored confidence faster than denial ever could. Interim leadership was announced. Quiet professionals with compliance histories instead of charisma. Training sessions scheduled. Reporting channels reinforced. Policies once buried were elevated and enforced. The system did what systems are meant to do when allowed to function. It healed. As the terminal returned to its ordinary rhythm, Elias stood and moved on. Announcements chimed, suitcases rolled, conversations resumed, life continued, altered in ways most would feel before they could name. He passed Gate C-17, same podium, same screens, different posture behind them. The gate agent met his eyes and nodded. No apology, no gratitude. Recognition was enough. A final verse settled in him, not as command but closure. The righteous care about justice, but the wicked have no such concern. Elias walked on. Behind him the airline continued, leaner in ego and stronger in integrity. Ahead of him, the day unfolded without his name attached to it. The collapse had come and gone, and what remained was not ruin but alignment. The airport felt different weeks later, not quieter, lighter. The same terminals hummed with rolling luggage and overlapping announcements, but something invisible had shifted. Procedures moved with less tension. Voices carried less. Fear. Authority no longer leaned forward. It stood upright. Elias Monroe walked through the terminal without recognition. No cameras followed him now. No phones lifted. He wore the same simple clothes, the same calm posture, as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened here. That was the point. At Gate C-17, a new sign gleamed above the podium. Fresh lettering, crisp edges. The gate agent on duty stood straighter than her predecessor had, eyes focused, hands steady. When Elias paused nearby, she looked up, not with apology or awe, but with professional ease. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," Elias replied. The gate no longer carried the memory of humiliation. It carried correction. Beyond the glass, aircraft moved with confident rhythm. Flights departed on time. Maintenance crews worked without pressure to rush. The airline had settled into a new alignment, less charismatic, more accountable. Inside corporate offices miles away, the consequences had finished, unfolding. The settlement agreement arrived quietly, negotiated without theatrics. Passengers who had been wronged received compensation without being forced to beg for it. Employees once silenced were offered restitution and restored protections. The document did not read like an admission of guilt, but it carried responsibility. The board issued an executive apology, not crafted for headlines, but for record. It acknowledged harm, outlined reforms, and committed to oversight that could not be overridden by ego. The words were measured. No one shouted, no one deflected. True apologies rarely need volume. The airline's reputation management team worked differently now. Instead of spin, they tracked trust. Instead of burying incidents, they surfaced data. Transparency became the strategy, not a slogan. Most importantly, brand accountability was no longer a phrase reserved for crisis memos. It was built into training, audits, and authority limits. The brand learned what Elias had always believed, that dignity, once institutionalized, protects everyone. Elias never attended the press briefing. He declined every interview request. He forwarded invitations back to the board with a single line. Let the process speak. And it did. At a quiet cafe overlooking the runway, Elias sat with a cup of tea this time. He watched a plane taxi past, sunlight catching the fuselage just right. Somewhere inside, a family laughed. A flight attendant checked her list. A pilot followed procedure. Ordinary life, restored. A verse surfaced in Elias's mind, unforced and gentle. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. Peacemakers, he knew, weren't passive. They simply refused to confuse justice with vengeance. A man approached hesitantly, mid-40s, well-dressed, familiar in a way Elias couldn't immediately place. "I don't know if you remember me," the man said. "I was on that flight, first class." Elias nodded. "I remember the moment." The man swallowed. "I wanted to say, I learned something. Watching you stand there, not reacting, letting the system answer." Elias smiled faintly. "It doesn't always answer." "No," the man agreed. "But this time it did." They shook hands. Brief, equal, unremarkable. The man walked away lighter than he arrived. Elias finished his tea and stood. He did not linger. Closure does not require ceremony. As he passed through the terminal, he noticed small changes others might miss. A sign clarifying passenger rights, a staff training poster emphasizing dignity, a supervisor calmly backing an employee who questioned a decision. These were not monuments. They were habits. At the exit, Elias paused once more, glancing back at the flow of travelers moving freely through corrected systems. Justice had done its work and stepped aside. Another verse rose in him, steady as breath. "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." Micah 6:8. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly. He stepped into the sunlight. Stories like this aren't about power being revealed. They're about power being restrained. Elias didn't win because he owned something. He won because he trusted something bigger than himself, a system built on integrity, accountability, and patience. When justice is rooted in humility, it doesn't need to humiliate. It corrects, restores, and leaves space for growth. God's word reminds us that true strength shows up quietly. It endures, it waits, and when the moment comes, it allows truth to stand on its own feet. If you've ever been judged unfairly, silenced by authority, or tempted to fight fire with fire, remember this: dignity lasts longer than dominance. Justice doesn't shout. It lands softly. If you have ever felt powerless in a moment of injustice, then what Elias Monroe chose to do next might change how you see strength forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices, where real stories remind us that faith, patience, and integrity still matter. Thank you for walking this journey with us.